Welcome to the Tarot Tapestry, a weaving of self-discovery, where three tarot mavens put their heads and hearts together to offer their wisdom and insights about the tarot. We hope that you find this helpful in your personal journey to self-discovery and growth.
Join us as we explore ways to use tarot for self-reflection and self-correction.
Together, we'll discover new ways to use tarot to weave threads of understanding into the tapestry of your life. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Tarot Tapestry, and Happy New Year to everybody. In today's episode, we will be talking about year in review tarot spreads. And I really can't wait to dig in and start talking about this. But before we do, say hello to my partners. How's everybody doing?
Doing good. We had a really tame New Year's Eve, which is what we like. I think we were in bed asleep by like 9:30.
Okay.
And then, of course, we were woken up by our neighbors with their fireworks going off. But, you know, at least it didn't last too long this year. Thank goodness.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it was
pretty
nice.
much the same. Pretty much the same. We're very quiet. I think I can remember back 2 nights ago. I can hardly remember back to this morning, but my grandson who I live with, we ordered pizza and just had pizza, and I didn't try to go to sleep because I already knew the neighbors were going to be crazy, and we had fireworks. We also had gunshots, and I think it was people just shooting guns in the air, just because they had one and they thought they could shoot it, not realizing that you could
bullets come down
somebody from a long distance with a gunshot in the air. But, God forbid that we have any intelligence. So, and then we had to have the obligatory, I won't say domestic violence because I don't think it was between the couple. I think it was somebody else. I don't know whether it was people they invited and they got into a fight or whatever, but it was some screaming fight between the women, girls or whatever, and they were screaming that I don't even know. And so finally they managed to calm down and about 1:00. So
all right, very nice. We had my husband and I stayed up, we were watching like a show, and it just happened to have the last episode of the season just happened to have ended like 4 minutes before New Year's Eve, which was great. And this year there seemed to have been quite a few fireworks going on. I mean, I could look out my window and kind of see some of the ones that shoot a bit higher in the air.
Yeah.
And I was just hearing it for maybe about a half hour before the new year and for about an hour afterwards. And I don't mind the fireworks.
They start here at about noon.
Yeah, like I heard some of them earlier on, but they must have been pretty far away, so it wasn't so bad. But what I don't like is when they start shooting off what I think might be M80s, is that's the only thing I can think of, but those really, really loud ones, I do not like, and I find them to be very just annoying.
Yeah, I'm not a fireworks I like them if it's at like a show and they're, far away up in the sky, but I'm the same way. I'm not a big fan of loud explosions and gunfire.
Yeah, I love the fireworks. I think they're beautiful. I just don't like those other ones.
Yeah, I ever saw was when I was living in Denver with Valerie, and we lived in an apartment. It was a luxury apartment that she had picked, and it was about 4 stories tall, but it had a parking garage attached to it that we parked in, and it was 6 stories tall. And I used to go up to the roof a lot. It had an elevator that went up all the way up, and I used to go up to the roof a lot early in the morning. It's like sometimes when I get off to work and just watch the sun come up or take pictures. It was a beautiful view. And so 4th of July, we went up to the roof after we had our food and everything with her. Her brother was over, and we had basically not 360 because they didn't do it all the way, but probably 270-degree view of all the fireworks.
Oh, that's nice.
Out by Sloan's Lake and Northern and out near the airport. I mean, you couldn't hear anything. you could just see the fireworks going off.
That
And it
sounds
was
perfect.
really beautiful. It
Yeah.
was really beautiful. We loved it. And that was the first year we lived there. So not very many people were up there. They didn't think about it. And I had just said, hey, let's just go up to the roof and see what's up there. And so it was really cool. So
That's beautiful.
Nice. I'm
Very,
sorry
very
if
nice.
you
So,
hear doors opening and shutting. I guess there's some utility people going through the backyard. So my husband
Oh.
is
okay.
okay. So
I haven't heard anything yet. So,
good.
Nope.
so before we begin talking about these year in review spread, I wanted to just I want to express like our gratitude to all of our listeners. I just want to let them know that we're very appreciative for them tuning in to our episodes and for following us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for now. So I just wanted to say, like, thank you, thank you, thank you for just, sticking with us and listening to us babble on about tarot and hoping that you're learning a little bit on the way.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody out there
Yes.
who's doing that. We really
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. So I can't believe 2025 is here. And I was thinking about this, and a good part of me feels very optimistic about this year, and more so in regards to like some of the newer projects um, that I have, the ideas that I have percolating in my brain, and just knowing that I can kind of like get started on working on that. But there's a whole other part of me that is pretty concerned, about the welfare of our country. Once Trump is sworn in, I it like worries me because obviously their agenda is not in the best interest of the common people, right? The everyday folk who are working hard to afford living life. But yeah, but I do feel very positive about it, and I'm positive about this podcast and just where we can take it, and
I think, yeah, I agree with you. I'm trying to my solution to that anxiety about the big overarching everything that's going to happen and is happening now is to, of course, keep informed about what's happening. So if I can do things, I do them, but also I'm trying to turn my attention and my efforts more local, and that starts like in my house, in my person, and
yeah,
also I want to get more knowledgeable about what's happening just in this community where I live, and acting in ways that I can, doing what I can to make
absolutely.
it better.
Yeah, I read an article or a post on social media this morning, and they were talking about something you'll be really familiar with, Kate, the Serenity Prayer. And it doesn't have to be, it says God grant me the whatever, but you can say whatever you want, self, universe, goddess, whatever. There's a phrase that we use in the coven. It's God, etc. It's
That's
like
good.
God, etc. So it could be whatever you want it to be, which
Mhm.
I really like. But again, the the wisdom to know the difference between the things that you can change and the things that you can't change. And I think that a lot of the worry and stress and just about is over things that we know that we can't change. I mean,
Yeah.
all we can do is cast our one vote in an election. All we can do is, I mean, we can talk to people, we can post on social media, we can have discussions, we can talk to our kids or our parents or our friends and relatives and whatever, if we choose to do that, if it's safe to do that. But when it comes to the big picture out there, we don't. That's all the control that we have. I'm going to do something this year that I've never done before. And on Monday, I'm going to go to a meeting of what's called Pueblo Indivisible. I want to say right after the election, or maybe I think it was right after the election when everybody was just kind of, reeling with what had happened. I watched a video, or I got on a Zoom with, I don't know, 20,000 other people. It's called Indivisible, and it's a group that works to fight, fascism and things that are trying to creep in and do that. And so they have chapters, and Pueblo had a chapter, and they had the emails and stuff. So I sent an email and asked to be put on their mailing list, and I got a thing today that they'd had a meeting, and I didn't realize that. But the next meeting is on Monday from 12 to 2, and I'm going to go. I mean, I don't know.
Excellent.
I don't know if I'll do anything. I don't know what, they had an agenda, what they're going to talk about. And, that's a step that I can do. That's something that I can do. And
Uh,
so, yeah. So the small things that you can do, the things that you're comfortable with, even if you step a little bit outside of your comfort zone, just, those things that you can do in the place where you live, because, those things will not trickle down, they'll bubble up. They will bubble
yeah.
up. And that's how, just like you talked about in the new moon thing with the roots, we are the roots. We are the roots. Every little town, community, city, we are the roots. And so that's, if all the roots start working that way, then it's going to come up, it's going to bubble up to the top.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing, that
Yeah.
you're doing. And I just wanted to let our listeners know that, we will have an episode where we'll be talking a lot about, just the emotions that stir up with this new administration coming in.
Yep.
And
And
kind of
circles,
just,
I like to think of it as circles of control. Like you can just literally draw a circle on a piece of paper when you're upset about something and just write all of the things that you can affect in the middle and all of the things that you're worried about that, but you really don't have any say in on the outside. And it's just like a good little visual reminder of I'm doing everything I can. I
Mhm.
can't
yeah,
fix everything. I can't do everything, but I can do everything that I can do,
Right.
and so it can help with that sort of
yeah.
anxiety.
So when we have that, when that episode airs, we'll have some ideas on what we could do to kind of help deal with the anxiety and how we can use tarot,
Hmm.
along our journey to kind of keep us grounded, a bit more stable, and maybe even try, if you are a person who tends to be just very pessimistic and very worried, and rightfully so, you know, hopefully we can talk about some things that might help you to be a little bit more optimistic, to look forward to things, because there's a lot more in life than just what is happening,
Hmm.
in Washington.
Yep.
So yeah, so look out for that episode shortly after this one. So I did want to talk a little bit about our journey in 2024. We're talking about a year in review. You're using a tarot spread, but we've had our own journey in 2024. That was a
We
big
started
year
this in
for,
March.
that's
We've
right.
been doing this
Has
since
it been that
March.
long? Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
Time
Yeah.
flies.
We started
Hmm.
talking about it in March, kind of getting an idea of what we wanted to do and planning it out. And then I believe in June is when we started recording our episodes. And we
Hmm.
gave ourselves a timeline. We said that by October, we wanted to start publishing. And I was so proud of us that we actually kept to that timeline, right? So October 13th was our first episode aired.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, like I'm really proud of us that we set out this plan and we followed through, and we made our deadline, and here we are now, and I'm looking forward to what's ahead. All of the ideas that we all have about things that we want to do. So I'm pretty excited
Me
about it.
too.
Yeah. 2025. Yeah. Okay.
Just as a side note, 25 is my favorite number. I don't
Oh,
I don't know why. I know it's an odd number because it's on the ends of the five, but for me it's always been an even number because you can do a 5 by 5 square, and to me that is like an even number. So
Yeah.
Oh,
Cool.
25
I like that.
is my favorite number.
I like that. All right. So I wrote down like maybe a couple of questions that we can kind of start talking about. And I guess like the
Yeah.
biggest one are like, what are year and review tarot spreads?
I think it's just a way to sort of check in with yourself about things that are important to you, where you wanted to experience growth, or maybe put in better boundaries, or kind of whatever you felt like you were working on last year. Last year was my a temperance year. Temperance was my year of the card of the year. And last year really was about figuring out, for me, figuring out what I have and how I can combine what I already have into making it something different that better that I wanted. And this podcast is one of those things where I was like, hey, I have these great friends. They're super smart. And we have this time that we can spend every week together, figuring that out. So this is, something that I had access to that we got to blend and make something new out of.
Yeah.
And, with temperance, it's really, it was about figuring out what I really needed. We are conditioned to think we need more and more and more and better and better and better, whatever that means. And sometimes that can make us miss what we've already got. So 2024 was really a time for me to figure out what I had without having to worry about getting more of whatever. And then moving into this year, it's a devil year. So this is going to be about when I come up against resistance, when I see something like over there, that's what I want. I am going to take the time to figure out what I am doing to keep me chained to that rock. in, you know,
Yeah. And I love how you kind of just gave us too an example of how to do a year in a review, right? So if you are somebody who has been using tarot for a while and you like to use your year card, what you did, Angie, was beautiful. Like you looked back and said, okay, I worked with this card, temperance, and you were like, what were the lessons that I learned? And then through all of that, right, you're going back and you're reflecting on your past experiences, right? You're reflecting on the lessons that you've learned. You're reflecting on the growth that has occurred for you, using the broader topic with the temperance card. And I think we can also look at year in review tarot spreads as like a structured tarot spread. Like you can do structured tarot spreads, and then you
hmm
can do just random spreads where you just think of a question in your head and you pull a card, to it. And it's a wonderful tool to use to gain more insight about yourself, right?
hmm
Like, and it's not an easy thing to do. I'll tell you that because I have difficulty sometimes, like going back, because sometimes I think, God, I can't remember what happened in, the spring of last year, But when you take the time to really kind of go back and maybe even look at more like events that were very memorable for you, like, right? Why were they memorable? Were they very positive events, or were they events that, maybe that weren't, I don't want to say
Ideal.
tragic, but that were not
Weren't
ideal. Thank you.
ideal.
Thank you. Yeah, like all of those things, some of those things tend to stand out more in our head. And I, for myself, I find that when I am affected emotionally, whether those emotions are kind of negative emotions or whether they're very positive, those are the ones that stand out the most to me. And those are the ones that I can go back and really remember, what had happened. But it's a great tool. Linda, what are your thoughts on year in review tarot spreads?
I like to go back. I tend to be able because I have no memory anymore. I do a lot of that with my photos because I take a lot of pictures I take pictures of events, and I take pictures of weather things, and I take pictures of the sky, and I take pictures of the dog, and I take pictures of my food, and I take pictures of my tarot cards that I draw from, for daily pulls and stuff like that. So I can kind of go back to my photo thing through the year and kind of get my memory jogged that way. Oh, that was, when I did that, and that was, this person came to town, or I went here and did that, that kind of thing. So last year, numerologically speaking, was a tower year for me. Although the past couple of years have been more tower in actually things that had happened, but it was just a year to kind of maybe think about those things that had happened. And this year is the star, which is sort of like the respite after the tower has come down, and you jumped out and maybe you're safe and whatever, because it's not necessarily you that's having the crisis, but people have crisis, or having the buildings and everything falling around you. You might be fine, but and Lord knows, as far as everything goes towards the end of the year with the tower, with the election and everything, that was a very tower feeling event. So even though we're all still plugging along, it felt like the tower just fell. Certainly on November the 6th, that's how it felt.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I think the star also, just if you work with the tarot, because of the way that it is kind of that moment in time, under starlight, in standing in the water, 1 foot in the water, 1 foot on the ground, just sort of that pause. It's almost like you're maybe getting into a hot tub, maybe getting out of a hot tub, whatever.
Linda, I just want to clarify, is this star card is your 2025 personal card
It's my personal card.
for 2025 for this
Yes.
this year? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, we had the tower, and now we have the star. So now I feel like I have a bit of time to just breathe and look at all the stuff that happened, whether it was to me or around me or to other people, or, just stuff that happened in the year, and figure out, where we want to go forward. Now, the card for 2025, just for the year 2025, is the Hermit, number 9. And so that's kind of everybody's card if they want to use that. And that's the card, I think, in the entire deck, that's the card that I probably resonate the most with. And so combining those two, the star and the Hermit, it's going to be, I don't feel like it's going to be a year where I want to just not have contact with people, and turn off my phone and delete all my accounts, although I have deleted some social media accounts. But I think it's going to be important to assess how much time I am spending on social media, and see how much of my energy I want to continue to just put into social media randomly, not for things like this, and not for things like anything that might be involved in this group if I get involved with it or whatever, but just, get up in the morning, get my coffee, sit down, and all of a sudden it's 2 hours later and I've done nothing but scroll through whatever. I don't think I want to do that. I want to read more books. I want to work on more projects. I want to work on some more creative things. I want, just be more physically active. So yeah, I think looking back at what has happened, and some of the things, again, part of that is to pull back from just being so, I don't want to say doom scrolling, because I don't really feel a sense of doom, but there is a lot of high anxiety. There are a lot of high anxiety things out there. And I'm not a person to really get caught up in that kind of anxiety, but it does have an effect. I mean, you can't stand in the water and have it buffet you all the time and not be affected by it. You know, even if you're a rock, eventually it's going to wear you away.
Totally. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is a lot of stuff. I think I call it it's like you know, when the internet first started and you would have to call in with your phone and it took
Oh,
forever
yes, the dial up,
for
dial in,
everything
dial up.
Yeah.
to like load.
Yeah.
It's buffering. That's what it is. It's just
That's
like you're
it.
just
Yeah.
buffering. You just sit and you
Yes.
just scroll and
Exactly.
I did
Exactly.
yesterday morning my annual social media purge. So if you made it through that and we're still friends on social media, lucky you. But I just, I went through my list and I think I was telling Linda about it. I said I think I'm the only person on the internet who's like I have less than 100 followers and I love it. Like on
Oh, I probably
Facebook.
have less than 100 followers. I don't even know how many followers I have.
I
And
mean, I have some more like because I follow more tarot accounts and some people follow me back and stuff on Instagram is more, but like Facebook is where I would share more personal details. And I just looked through my list and I'm like, hey, if I haven't heard from you in a couple of years, get the fuck out of here. Like, why are you even, I don't think anybody noticed, you know.
And I like what I'm so if we take everything that we're saying to these year in review spreads or just questions, or you could even just look at it as, a year in review thinking or reflection, it also shows us why do we do them. You can do a year in review spread and you can get a lot of information. And then it's like, well, why bother doing them? Like, what's the purpose? And what both of you are kind of showing our listeners is, you're taking all of your past experiences and you're reflecting on them and saying, okay, so how can I use these lessons that I've learned moving forward into the new year? What might that require of me? And for both of you, or more maybe for Angie, is requiring almost like purging, like letting go and getting rid of things that you don't find service you anymore, right? That don't have a purpose for you in your life, and you're sort of like clearing things out, and Linda, you seem to be doing the same thing, or even if you
well,
haven't started doing something,
yeah,
you're
I mean,
thinking about.
ever since I moved to Denver in 2018, I have, and I basically did a 3 year because I lived in that apartment. We moved in there when he was 15, and then when he graduated when he was 18, my grandson. And through those 3 years, knowing that I was going to move to Denver, I did a conscious, kind of downsizing, decluttering. Now, a lot of it I kept because a lot of it was just I was going to leave, and we put it in storage for him to furnish an apartment when he moved in. So basic stuff we kept, but a lot of stuff that I went through my photographs and, like for instance, I had taken hundreds of photographs when I went to England with my mom in 2000. And I went seriously purge those because it's like I had 15 pictures of the London Eye. One or two might be fine. I had, 20 pictures of a garden in Scotland. It's like, a couple of those are fine. Every single photo of my mother, obviously, I kept, but I didn't have to keep all of the pictures of every single place that we went because I was, this was film camera years and I was just snapping pictures like crazy. So I've downsized that. I've downsized my clothes. I have passed on and done away with every single business type of clothing item that I have ever owned. No longer will I ever do that. And I had pretty much gotten rid of all my shoes until I found this one brand of shoes. And now I'm buying every style of those shoes because I love them and they don't hurt my feet and my back pain has gone away. So yeah, now I'm into shoes again. But I wear them and they're functional. So anyway, but yeah, it's a process you have to kind of keep up with, because things accumulate. Things come in and it's like, wait a minute, that counter was clear. How come all that stuff is on that counter? Where did it come from?
Last year, I did a year ahead spread, right?
Mm.
Where I picked in January a one tarot card for every month. And I swore to myself, okay, you can do this, right? You can just, the beginning of every month, you take a look at that tarot card and just think about the card, the picture, and just whatever you receive from it, how can I apply that to the month? And I did it for maybe the first 3 or 4, and then I never looked at it again.
Mhm.
And now it's like my goal was, okay, so now I do this, I'm going to journal about it at the end of the year. I can go back and I can reflect on it. And that didn't work at all, which was okay because it was a lesson learned, right? Now I know for myself that doesn't work for me. So maybe we can talk about some, like you both of you had mentioned, using that your personal year card for 2024 and going back and reflecting on that, right? And how you can take those what you learned about yourself from that and bring it into 2025, and maybe even adding that to your new card for 2025, right? But like, what are some other ways that you can use them? Like one, like we just talked about it, one way can be to kind of get a review of some major lessons that you learned, right?
I think
And then,
it's easy to to get to the end of a year and think, I didn't do anything. Nothing happened this year. To really focus on all that I said at the beginning of last year, I was going to do this and this and this and this, and I didn't do it. And now, you know, I suck. Basically, is where a lot of people end up after doing these big, um, or not using a tool, just sitting down and being like, what did I do? And so I think pulling a card for like you absolutely did do something. You learned something. You've been here for 365 more days than you were at the beginning of last year. So I think tarot is a really good way to say, you can pull a card about, what is the biggest lesson I learned,
yeah.
and or was meant to learn, or where's the learning available for me about the last year. And that's how
And
I
you
like
can
to do.
even take that and associate it to different areas of your life. Like, what's a
Absolutely.
lesson that I learned regarding my finances? What's a lesson I learned,
Hmm.
something
And
related to my job?
I also think it's important because if you're sitting here now on the 2nd of January, which is today is my daughter's birthday, by the way.
Oh, happy birthday to your
She's
daughter.
Happy
42.
birthday.
And so if you're sitting here on the 2nd of January in the world, probably somewhere in North America, probably somewhere in the United States, if you're listening to this, regardless of whether you set resolutions last year and did or did not live up to them, I'm making air quotes, um, you have accomplished the fact of living through another year. Now, you may have set a lot of New Year's resolutions, and some of them you may have kept, some may have fallen by the wayside, just like your year ahead spread did, but when you go back, if you pick one of those resolutions and you think, well, I wanted to do this, but I started doing this, but then this happened, you think, oh, well, that happened in March and that completely threw everything out of the window and I had to deal with that and this, so then it kind of gives you an idea of, if you're sitting here on January the 2nd and you're reviewing your year, then you've accomplished something. You're here. You're doing,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
and I
And
think it's really important. I think it's really important for people to to work on, because it's not something that's going to happen like flipping a switch, but work on not beating yourself up over what you didn't do.
yeah,
Because I think
absolutely.
we all spend a lot of time beating ourselves up over what we didn't do. And Angie and I were chatting about this morning. We're so conditioned to think that we're not worth anything unless we're doing something. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
do anything. I just sat around all day and scrolled. I
Or
just sat
feeling
around
bad
all day.
about not doing something.
Well, see, that's
So
good that
what?
you're saying that, Linda, because when you if you want to break down like maybe some common features or common components of like a year in review spread, like yes, one of them that we've been talking a lot about is like a lesson learned, right? So you can pull a card to a lesson learned, but you can also pull cards that maybe narrow it down a little bit more to like maybe pulling some cards and thinking about how you've changed, like thinking about literally how you've changed in a certain area of your life, right? And another one could be like, okay, let me pull some cards and think about some of the challenges that I faced, in my life, because sometimes it is a little hard. And I think for myself to look at it as like, okay, what is the lesson that I learned? And sometimes I need things to be broken down a little bit more. So if I look at it as, okay, what were some of the challenges I had at work this year that really stood out to me? That's something that I can pull a card and I can reflect on. What has changed for me over time? Like my perfect example, I became a grandmother. I became a
Mhm.
grandmother at the end of 2024, and that's a huge change, and that has impacted me. And it's a change that will continue to impact me for basically the rest of my life moving forward. So talking about challenges, how you've changed, lessons that you've learned, right? Maybe some, if you want to pull cards and think about some major themes that might have occurred for you, and I think about us as this podcast and me, like the Three of Pentacles. Like to me, that's a theme, right? This
Mhm.
collaboration, with people to create something. So
Mhm.
when you think about these year in review spreads for our listeners, there are many different ways that you can kind of approach how you want to reflect on the year, and then maybe even if you've done some work on like certain kinds of patterns that you may have in your life, or patterns that you notice that you do, like maybe like you were saying, Linda, right? When you wake up in the morning, one of the patterns or habits that you had were you took your phone and you were like scrolling on social media, right? And that was a pattern, that was a habit that you created for yourself. And looking back, if you say to yourself, okay, well, what were some of the habits or patterns that I had? You said it, right? Oh, I do this. And now you're like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I don't want to do that anymore moving into
Yeah.
2024.
I mean,
Um,
I'm working on instead of because coffee's happening no matter what. That's not gonna change. Never gonna change. I'm gonna get up, do the coffee thing. That's the way I move into the day. But I have been moving more towards reading. I want to get back to reading. It kind of worried me for a while that I wasn't able to focus on reading a book, which kind of distressed me because I've been an avid reader since I was about 4 years old. And so I have all these books around where I sit downstairs, when I would drink my coffee. And every time I go to Valerie, because she gets the book of the month from Barnes and Noble, and she's an avid reader. And so I always bring home at least a book or two from
Yeah.
her,
You
you
have to
know.
help her so she doesn't get buried.
Right. And I had been reading books on my phone from the library, and that counts, that counts, and instead of scrolling. But I wanted to get back into reading hardcover paper books, because I just like books. I don't have to own every book that I read, but since I am gifted books frequently, I can read them and pass them along. And so that's the habit that I want to work on. That's one of the habits I want to work on, just reading. And I have books that I've had for a long time that, I meant to read that and I never did. And it's like, that's the one that's picking that up this week. We're going to start it. So, so yeah, I mean, and I did for a while, I was doing, these little 7-minute videos that Angie and I do. This woman she's a physical fitness coach and she's British, but she does these 7-minute workout videos that are just great. You get going and it's only 7 minutes long. And so I was, taking the dog for a walk to that was my warm up, and then I'd come back and do her videos. Well, I've fallen out of doing her videos, and it's stupid because I like them. They're easy. I feel much better when I do them. I can tell a difference in a week. I can tell a difference. It's easier for me to go up and down stairs. I have more energy. It's like, why did you
Mhm.
stop?
But
Yes.
it's
Because,
not stupid, Linda. It's not
well,
stupid.
it's not stupid, but it's
You're
just
just
like
human.
it's just human, yeah. But see, that's just
Hmm.
it. Here I go
Yeah.
talking
We're all
about
very
yeah,
conditioned to say, I set a goal and I didn't do it perfectly every day. I didn't execute perfectly. So now it's time to beat up on myself.
right.
And
Yeah,
it's important to have friends who remind you, hey, man, you're doing okay. It's all right. You can
absolutely.
start doing them again. We
Yeah,
could get up and
yeah,
do it right now
exactly.
if you want. you know, 5
You
minutes.
know, and that, you know what, having that support, it helps you to start now changing how you
Right.
start to talk to yourself. Tarot can do that too, right? It
Yeah.
can be a constant reminder on a daily basis,
It's one of the
of
things that and meditation that really helped me to start engaging with the self-talk, because a lot of it is so unconscious that you don't even really know it's happening until you sit down
Yeah,
and you pull a card and top mind or whatever conscious mind is going, oh, this is a nice card, but why do I feel so afraid or angry, or and then it gives you that opportunity to sort of start noticing.
Yeah, and then
Hmm.
when you think about too, like if you're, so we talked about several things that you can ask the cards, like habits and lessons and
Hmm.
challenges and stuff. But you can twist that around too and talk about more of the positive things, like pulling cards and thinking about what is a strength that you
Hmm.
have learned about yourself, right? Like that's really important. And then like what are some achievements that you have had over the year? Or what are some triumphs? What is something that you really, really struggled with and you came out on the other side? It's like looking at those things that you celebrated about yourself, because that's really important. Like it's important to take these lessons that we've learned and these challenges and everything we've gained from them to bring us into the new year. And it builds that root system that you were talking about, Linda, before, right? To kind of keep you a little bit more stable as you are going through other challenges, because there'll always be challenges, right? But then when you take those positive things, like, the first card that comes to my mind is like the Six of Wands, right? Like things that you celebrated, accomplishments, triumphs, and you bring the feelings that you had and how you overcame them or how you triumphed, and you bring that into the new year. It's like you're bringing more positive energy into the new year, instead of just being like, oh, well, I didn't do this last year and I should have done this. Well, I'm going to do it again next year. Like,
Yeah,
it
totally.
yeah,
And you can even an interesting exercise when you're trying to review anything. It doesn't have to be for a whole year. Is if you have encountered something that you found really difficult or challenging, is to go through the deck and pick a card that represents that issue to you, and then shuffle and think, because no matter what happened last year, here you still are. You survived it. And you can ask tarot, you can say, give me a reminder of a way that I kept myself going through this, or found support when I needed it, or,
yeah,
you are a badass. Everything that happened to you your whole life up until this moment, no matter how scared or anxious or angry or shamed, ashamed of yourself or anything, all of that, it doesn't matter. You survived 100 fucking percent of everything that has happened to you in your life. And now you get to decide what's next.
yeah,
And to realize that these things that made you make maybe decisions you're not super proud of aren't because you're a horrible, horrible human being and you just don't deserve to take up any space or feel happy or proud of yourself ever. It's just because you're human, and we all do what we think we have to do to survive. And
hmm
that is not always Instagrammable and perfect.
right.
It is often quite intense and scary and lonely, and here you still are, and you know what? It's going to be okay. If it's not
Yeah.
okay, it's because it's not over.
What was that? Did you all see the movie The Best Marigold Hotel?
Mm.
No.
Oh, I did,
I
but it's been
think
a while. It's been a minute.
I
I
think
know
it
what
was
it's
called
about.
the Best Marigold Hotel. It was about this hotel in India where this young man, Dev Patel, if you know him, an actor, he's trying to make this hotel sort of like a place where retirees in England would come and kind of stay there for a while. And obviously things are not going according to plan, but people show up and he has to accommodate them. And
It's a
he's
lovely, lovely movie about
it really
how
is. Both of them.
you
They have
can
the
find
Best Marigold
connection.
Hotel and the second best Marigold Hotel. They both are
Hmm.
great.
Yeah.
But his thing was everything everything is will be okay in the end, and if everything is not okay, then it's not the end.
Yeah,
Mm,
totally.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
I like that.
And tarot's
I
a
like
really
that.
good place to go for that reminder when you're reviewing. And you can talk about year in review, but we also review all the time. Like that's what you're doing when you're sitting there feeling bad about something that happened in second
Yeah.
grade. You're reviewing your
Yeah.
life, and you can get quite stuck on certain things. And tarot is a really great way to start showing you a new path to take instead of walking around in the same circle over and over and over. you know, it can be like, hey, but look at this. Check it out.
Yeah,
We
it's
could
true
build a ladder.
because
you know,
memories of things and things that you play over and over again. It literally is like when you see the old timey things where they put the needle on the record and they make the grooves. That's what you're doing in your brain. You're deepening these grooves that you don't want to be in, and you've got to do something to, get yourself out of it and make another groove that's more positive.
Yeah, those are your neural pathways, right? Those are
Exactly.
the
yoga
pathways
calls
that
them
you create.
samskaras.
Oh,
Samskaras in yoga. It's
Samsaras.
like samskaras. They are,
Samskaras.
how the bottom of a lake has ripples in it because of the waves above. That's what you're doing to your brain and they can get quite deep and quite scary but there's a way out. There totally
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
is.
absolutely. It's amazing too, because when you talk about these neural pathways that you create in your brain, some of the ones that are used and reinforced often, like say if you take one about criticizing yourself all the time, right? Like, I am very guilty of this, and I'm better now than I was before, but I would always, when I looked in the mirror, my first thought was always something negative. I would always point out something that wasn't right. And what they say is when when you say those things to yourself, right, you're creating this pathway. But then what also happens is because you do it so often, the pathway starts to develop what I think is called a myelin sheath around it that hardens the pathway or protects it so that it becomes even harder to change. And then when you do want to make the change and you start to like look in the mirror and try to say something positive about yourself, you can kind of feel that resistance in
Hmm.
your head for doing it. And it's like a chemical thing, a thing that's actually happening in your brain.
And it doesn't feel good, but
So
it really is good. When you're changing your mind, it doesn't
yes,
feel good at first, even though it's going to be better. I'm doing this to make my life better. It's
yes.
still going to feel
And then
like shit. And that doesn't
eventually,
mean it's
yeah,
wrong or that you're wrong for feeling crappy while you're trying to do better. You're learning a new thing. You're literally reprogramming your brain. Like your
yeah,
brain
and
is
you
like,
have
no,
to.
no, no, we do it this way. This is how we do it. This is the easy way. I know we feel awful, but let's just keep doing it this way because it's just so much easier.
Ah, see, that's a key word right there, is because it's so much easier, right? And then the more that you start to like, for me, It wasn't only just saying something positive, but it was being able to like look in the mirror and not say something negative about myself. But the more that you start to make those changes, now that pathway starts to literally die. Like when you think about physically what goes on in your brain, it's like it's amazing that this pathway can then die because you're now creating a new one and it's not getting the energy that it needs, like those chemical reactions going on to make it. It's fascinating, like when you
Hmm.
learn about, neuroplasticity and how even as an older person, like, I am in my late 50s, you can still make changes. Like you can still
Hmm.
change
Oh
some
my
of those
God, yes.
Well, I'm
pathways
gonna
in your
say
brain.
I think that's one of the reasons that people, because of the things that science is learning about the brain, and it's becoming more and more into the common knowledge. I think that's one of the reasons that people not necessarily are living longer, but they're living younger longer. Because when I was 25, when I thought of somebody who was my age now, 67, I was thinking wheelchairs, walkers, no teeth, white hair. Now I do have some white hair. Um, that kind of thing where they couldn't barely function because they were so old. Well, now I'm that age and I'm still doing everything that I did. Maybe it's a little slower, but I'm still, schlepping groceries out of the car and hauling and taking the dog for a walk, which is a physical
Yeah.
challenge with the way he is, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, and I think that when when you don't think that you're doomed to this age thing, when you get to be a certain number, I think it changes your outlook, and you know, you just have a different appearance. Because all of my friends in my crone group in college I think if you sat us all together, no one would think that we were physically as old as we are.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
I love that change. I love that change. And I even feel like a sense of like vitality, like I know I have physical limitations, right? Because I am getting older, but I also feel like this vitality. Maybe it's more of an intellectual vitality, or maybe it's more in my mind than it is
Well, and
physically.
I think that's a big part of it. I think that if you keep, and I've told Angie, I said this to Angie because I just recently started watching Ted Lasso, and I
Oh,
don't
I
know.
love that show. Love
Okay,
it.
I
It's
I
the
hadn't
best
I had never
show.
seen it. I didn't really know what it was about, and then Eli, my grandson, he came down and he was like, "I'm watching Ted Lasso. It's great." And I'm like, "What's it
It's
about?"
so
And he
good.
told and he told me, and so, but that one, I just finished the first season, and so that one episode where he's playing the darts, where the guy challenges
Yes,
him to darts,
that's
and he
the best
that's
one.
the best one, where he says, I saw this thing when I was taking my son to school. It said, be curious, not judgmental. And that's the
Yeah.
thing, is I think that, and you can look at the difference between some people who go for one philosophy in politics and people who go for the other philosophy. Is some people are curious and some people are so judgmental, and it shows on their face. I'm sorry, it
Hmm.
does. It shows in their physicality. It shows. You can tell
Hmm.
the difference. You literally
Yeah,
look at somebody and say, that's probably a curious person, and that's probably a really judgmental person.
yeah, and I love tarot because I think tarot keeps you curious about things. It keeps that curiosity going, that momentum going, and it
Right.
And
keeps
it,
that motivation for yourself going and wanting to learn more, about yourself,
Right.
because we all of those external stimuli that affect who we want to be. And I know I use the word your authentic self a lot. And it's taken me some time to really be able to define that word or be able to really give myself a good description of what that word means because it's a word that floats around a lot,
Hmm. It's a real
especially
big
in
buzzword.
it's a big
In
buzzword, right? And it took me a while to really understand what that meant for me. And what it means for me is finding the person that I was meant to be outside of all of the societal norms that kept me from doing things that I wanted to do, And I think about my high priestess, that inner voice inside of me that has been telling me things for years and probably even decades. And
hmm
I ignored them because of what society said I should be doing. And for me to reach my authentic self, I almost have to go against my programming and reprogram myself so that now I am living the life that feels right to me. I can't explain what feels right to me. Like I think everybody knows
hmm
and can come up with some example or some time in their life where something just felt so right to them. And that's what your authentic self is to me. And it's like, will I ever maybe reach 100% of authenticity? Maybe not, but are we really supposed to? Maybe it's the journey. It's like they say that all the time, right? It's not the destination, but it's the journey. And it's everything that we are doing for ourselves, that I think also just keeps you motivated. And I don't know. I'm gonna stop
and
there.
when you
No,
figure
no, no,
out
no.
how you feel about something, when you figure out how you feel about it, not the right answer for the face that I'm talking to right now, but this is how I feel, and how I
Yes.
feel is not going to change dependent on who I'm fucking talking to.
Yes.
This is how I feel. And if you cannot handle how I authentically feel, then you can remove yourself. Like, I'm I am not here to be molded like clay anymore. I am
Yeah.
done. This happened when I turned 50. And you get all these ridiculous things like in your social media feed. Feel like you're 25, look like you're 20 again. I'm like, buddy, I didn't even look like I was 20 when I was fucking 20.
I know.
Okay? So, it's not going to happen for me this life. I am never going to fit into that mold. I am big and awkward and weird and hairy and and I am going to be this way because the other thing always stealing all of my attention was such a big goddamn distraction that I just cannot tolerate anymore in my life. And my motto for 2025 is listen, I forgive everything. Everything is forgiven. But don't come for me because I promise I've given it more thought than you have. And I know how I
Mm.
feel now. So it's okay. I don't need apologies or flowers or, I would love a big box of money. That would be lovely. But I don't need that to be okay with me or the way any of my relationships are going because I know I've done my fucking best. And that's all I can do. And I'm going to let
Absolutely.
you worry about yourself now instead
Yeah,
of
because
me
that's
trying
all we
to.
really should be worried about is ourselves.
Hmm.
We are a priority. Now, even I know, and some people might even look at, well, I have kids and the kids are my priority. And yes, your
Yeah.
children, your spouse, your
When they're a certain
parents,
age, when they're a certain
Yeah.
age,
but
beyond a
I
certain
always
age,
think that they
You know.
kind of like they are a priority, but it's almost like that priority can run parallel and equal to the priority of yourself. There does, and I know that's kind of like contradictory to the word priority, but I don't think it has to be the top priority. Why can't there be two things that are of equal weight? To say that these two things are a priority, but they're just different. And how I prioritize myself and how I take care of myself has a direct effect on how I prioritize my children and my relationships.
And how
Well,
You
they
know,
learn to
and
do it
the other thing
themselves.
is
yeah,
when your children see you as a doormat, whether you make yourself the doormat or somebody else does, that teaches them things that will not
That you
serve
don't
them
want to
later
teach
in
them.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's just like when you give everything to your child, you know,
Taking good
there's
care
no
of yourself.
consequences to anything, you know, you end up with a sociopath pretty much.
Yeah.
yeah. So
We don't need more of
everything,
those.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything you do, your children are witnessing it
Mhm.
and seeing it firsthand. And believe me, and I have two grown kids already, and I know that things that occurred when they were younger that I didn't even realize until
Yeah.
afterwards.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like you're not always so conscious of it either, because I didn't have, not that it's saying that I didn't have tarot then, but I didn't have that way of thinking of putting myself as a
Figuring out
priority.
what you really
Yeah.
needed and what you really wanted so you could steer the ship in a way that felt
Yeah.
good for you and your kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had that discussion with my children. The only thing I would ever change about my life is waiting a few years to have them. Because I was 21 when Ryan was born. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I didn't even know who
Yeah.
I was yet. So, but thankfully we made it through. We still talk. We talk very honestly, my children and I do,
Yeah,
about
you know,
this is evolution and nobody's born knowing everything.
Yeah.
And you can say you did this and it was wrong and it hurt my feelings. And I can say, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. I'm
absolutely.
sorry. I wish I could have and not oh well I blah blah blah. My life was so hard and you're lucky you had a roof over your head or whatever, you know. So evolution happens. That was not anything to do with the year in review, but it is kind of.
It is. I'm sure we can find some connection there some way. But getting back to our year, our end of year tarot spread, should we start pulling some cards? I mean, I
Yes.
know that we're not going to do a full
I
spread, but
actually came up with three positions or
beautiful.
whatever. The first one, and I
Question.
already pulled my cards
Of
because
course
I
you
know
did.
that
I know she's
you know,
always ahead of us, Linda. She always
it's a
comes
trauma response, you guys. I'm
completely
sorry.
repaired. Listen to me.
She has to be
Prepared.
so perfect. She has to be so perfect.
Such a teacher's pet. Yeah, well, I was really good at school.
I'm the
Sorry.
teacher, so I can be my own pet.
Yeah, Kate's the teacher.
I
I
So,
am
know.
the teacher, and I come prepared with what I want to talk about, but I never come prepared with the spreads or
Okay,
with
yeah.
so
pulling cards.
what are your items,
Okay,
questions,
so
whatever you want to call? Say.
the three things that I pulled cards for was the one way I really evolved in 2024. And I related this to my card of the year, which was temperance, but you can totally do it without a card of the year if you didn't have one or you don't, jive with that.
I'm sorry, you said evolved.
Yeah, one way
Okay.
I evolved, like something that I wasn't so good at maybe at the beginning of the year, and now I feel like I'm better at it. The second card was what is going to be the biggest challenge while I transition from this thing to the next thing, because I don't think, I mean, yeah, it's a new calendar year, but the new year doesn't start until spring. And I will go to my grave saying that. Like, everything is asleep right now. Why do I have to suddenly start going to the gym for 2 hours and getting up at 5 a.m.? And, no, we're not going to do that this year. I've tried 53 goddamn times and it's never worked. So 54, we're trying a different thing. Um, so that's basically like kind of my challenge over the winter, I guess.
Say that
What I'm
again.
gonna need to
Say that again.
what do I need to learn during this transition time from the way things were to going into the next thing. And then the third card was how to approach it, like a reminder for something I can do with like my own attitude. A reminder of, I know myself. I'm not the most patient person, so just kind of like a, hey, when you're feeling frustrated, remember this kind of card.
So is that like similar to like advice on how
Yeah.
to get through this
Hmm.
challenge or how to deal with
Challenge.
the
Yeah.
challenge?
Advice on how to deal with the challenge. So,
Well, would you believe that I was shuffling my cards and three of them just jumped out?
no
Oh,
way. That's great.
Oh, I'm going to use those. I haven't turned them
Okay.
over yet. I kind of,
Okay. Well, I pulled my cards ahead because we've all established that I'm the teacher's pet. Um, well, also I was the one who came up with the question. So,
right.
like,
So
how would you even,
you had
you
prior
know,
knowledge.
exactly? I stole the test. Um, my first card was the Two of Cups, and I'm using the classic Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and that is especially as it relates to temperance. Temperance is an angel standing in a field, basically. They've got both cups and they're figuring out what they have and what they're going to do with it and all that stuff. And then a way that I evolved over the course of the year is I learned that cooperation is great. You get more resources, more thought, more, but only with people I really freaking connect to.
Right.
That is it. you know, like, yes, I'm not an island, but I am also not a Kmart. I, you know,
Not a bus
um,
station.
I'm not a bus station, right? Not for everybody. And there's no hard feelings on my part if I'm not for you. That's okay. We'll all be okay.
It'll all be okay.
For the biggest challenge I'm going to have, I pulled the Seven of Pentacles, which is, if you know me, cutting away the things that are not the Two of Cups, deciding what that is. Because, and with the Pentacles, we're talking about resources. This fella has to water, fertilize, tend, trim all of these plants if he doesn't get rid of the ones that are already wasting his time, basically, and taking the energy from the healthy things that he thinks are gonna take off and do good for him. And the advice card I pulled is the Page of Cups, which is very good. Like, just remember you don't have to know how you feel about everything right off the bat. You can be like, maybe I felt this way before, but now I don't feel that way anymore. Or maybe I thought I was supposed to feel a way that I just can't make work in my head. So that's a good reminder for me to just stay curious, to be curious.
yeah, to
Pages.
be curious about those emotions. When you said that Page
Mm-hmm.
of Cups, it was like, when you are going through these transitions and these challenges, like being aware of your emotions and how you're feeling is,
Well, especially as being raised as a woman, which I am, we're often taught that our emotions are just nonsense. Like, you do what you're
You're
supposed to
only
do. It doesn't matter how
emotional.
you
You're
feel.
only emotional because you have hormones.
Yeah,
That's the
right.
only reason that you're emotional, because you have
Hmm.
hormones.
You're
And the only
probably on your
reason is
period,
because you're on your
or you need to
period
get laid,
and you
or
know
whatever they
that
say.
nothing else that's happened in your life has any effect on your emotional state.
Yes,
Only your hormones,
exactly.
only the fact that you're having
And
your period.
and we're not taught to view our emotions as a source of truth, which is something that I think we all get to try to remember when we hit menopause, for lack of a, I mean, when you hit your crone years, I guess, or whatever, you get to a certain level of maturity or had enough of that shit or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. And then you can start viewing your emotions as a source of truth. And the Page of Cups, because I do a lot of, I should know better by this age. Well, you know what? I don't. So what am I going to do? Am I going to sit here and be upset with myself for not knowing, or am I going to figure it out now? Am I going to just go,
Well,
you know what?
you're going to figure it out, Angie.
Yeah.
You're going to figure it
Yeah.
out.
Just go, you know what? I don't
there's a
know,
lot
but
of
I can
things.
figure it
There's a
out.
lot of things that we don't know from birth.
Hmm. Yeah. I used to
Oh my
pee in your
God.
diaper. I don't do that anymore.
Well, you might
But
you
you
might
might
later on,
later.
Angie. You never know.
Fingers crossed. God, I hope I didn't just jinx myself.
Oh my God. There's a whole line
There's
of
a there's
products
a
out there
product. There are
called
products for
Depends.
that. Yeah, there's products for that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's back to the cards now, ladies. Back to the cards. Okay. So it's so funny because I also got the Page of Cups, but I got the Page of Cups for card number two. But card number one,
Oh.
how have I like evolved, right?
Hmm.
Wasn't what how I looked at it is what wasn't so good but has gotten better over
Yeah.
the year. And I got the Ace of Pentacles. And I
Oh,
really love that
nice.
because of
So did
everything that
I.
you got that too, Linda?
Yes.
For the
Ah,
first card?
Yes.
yeah, like
Cool.
I love that because, you know, I I knew in the beginning of 2024 that there were these ideas, these creative ideas that I wanted to explore. And I really focused on like what resources were out there for me to use to help me work on these projects that I had in mind. And I took that step, like I did a lot of thinking about and finding the potentials out there, what I could do realistically, and then I went out and I pushed myself to do the things that I wanted to do, like we you and I, Angie, started to get together first, right, from the symposium,
Hmm.
and that was huge for like even me to like be like, okay, I'm going to meet up with somebody and we're going to talk over Zoom. It's like, well, what if she doesn't like me? What if we don't get along? What
Yeah.
if we have nothing to
And it
talk
was
about?
your
Like,
idea too. You're the one who said, I want to, let's do it at this time. And I was like, well, all right.
and I had to because I'm like, how are you going to know what's going to happen
Hmm.
unless you do it?
Hmm.
So it was like I did that. And then I said I wanted to take a course on facilitating new moons, and I did that. And then I said, when the three of us got together, it was kind of like, oh, we would make a great podcast. Why don't we give it a try? And then we
Hmm.
started doing that. And then I learned about the resources that were available to me. The two of you were resources. I learned more about the tarot. I learned how to edit a podcast,
Hmm.
publish it, put it out there on Spotify and Apple, like all of these things. So I think it's just, this is why I just love tarot. It's just like so
Hmm.
spot on. Anyway, okay. So then the biggest challenge in that transition, um, or even going from now, and on, right, is the Page of Cups. And it's so funny because I had posed a question to my sister and my brother, and I said, I am, on this journey of self growth, and I really would appreciate some input from them on things that they may see about me, that may not be maybe more reflective of my authentic self, right? And I wanted
Yeah.
them to share with me what that was because we as people can only do so much in looking within. Sometimes you need the help of others to
Yeah.
see. And my sister came up with emotional regulation, and I was like, yeah, because I have a really hard time with my emotions. I am a very emotional person.
Hmm.
And I'm okay with being an emotional person now more so than ever before, but I do need to learn how to regulate my emotions. I need to become a little bit more aware of, my emotions when I'm triggered, how it affects me, and how that affects me moving forward. So I have come a long way, right? I have been able to
Hmm.
deal with fear, that went to like, okay, now, so all of that. So I found that to be beautiful. And then the advice was the sun, and to
I got the
me,
sun too.
oh my
I got the
God,
sun
Linda,
too. I swear.
this is
Holy
great. So,
cow.
I
That's
look at
so cool.
the sun as the advice to me is you have the power within you to do pretty much of anything that you want. There is a light that shines bright in all of us, and we have that power to make it shine. We have that power to make it just like whoof, come right out of us. I wish people could see me go whoof, just like whoof, bring it out there into the world and just light up the space that we have around that. We have that ability to do that. And remembering that, and looking back and saying, where may I have seen that power show itself and shine itself before, is a good reminder on how I can continue, to work. And that's also a work in progress. But oh, I love you, Taro. Thank you so much.
I can't
Well,
wait to hear your whole thing because Taro is using the same language for both of you, but I want to hear how beautiful you are, different, how different and how much the same. I'm sorry, I get so
well,
excited I forget how to talk.
yeah. Okay. So I'll show this again. I'm using the Guardian of the Night, and I saw it over here. It's been sitting over here for a while, and I looked at it the other night, and it's just like, come, come. It was saying, come, I'm the one. And so I did the, whatever, the year in review or the year in ahead spread that Shannon did in the symposium. I did that with this deck night before last night, I think. I don't know. Time has ceased to have any meaning to me anymore. So anyway, Ace of Pentacles, how I have evolved. Last year, I came into some money, and it literally has been life changing. And I've been really spent a lot of time concerned about, how outside things may affect this, but I'm also doing things that I've wanted to do for a long time and hadn't been able to financially afford them. The course that I took for the end of life doula, the course that I'm taking now for teaching English as a second language or as a foreign language. I've been able to help some friends. I've been able to help family. And it's not just about the money, but it's about how not having to worry about every penny that comes and goes, and I do have to be careful. I've kind of settled down now. I fixed my car. I did, I've done most of the things that I have done have been things that I needed to get done.
Right.
But I think this Ace of Pentacles is sort of reminding me that there are more resources in the world than just money. And it's about energy and time and also creativity and how I want to put all those together to sort of craft and create the kind of life that I really want to have, as Kate would say, with my authentic self. And I'm very grateful that I can be more my authentic self because I don't have this other worry that we all have. I waver because I have concerns about banks, and I have concerns about should I invest or should I not invest or whatever, and I'm not really sure how to answer those questions, but that will come. And I think that, the ace being kind of the energy of beginnings, and, that is kind of taking me through into this new year of, what else can I do and how can I accomplish it? The second card that I got, which Kate didn't get, is the King of Swords.
Oh, that's a beautiful card as well.
It is a beautiful card.
With
Yeah.
the owl.
And of course, owls kind of represent wisdom. And this one was an owl too, which was kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Swords are all about, intellect and mind and wit, and the kings are the masters of their suit. And I think that where you put your thoughts is where your actions will follow, or your inaction. If you think certain thoughts, you're just kind of, maybe talking yourself out of doing something because you think it's going to be bad, or you think people are going to have an idea. Thinking for people is really not helpful. But
Yeah.
I think that this card, the King of Swords, is kind of telling me that I need to have right thinking. In Buddhism, there's right action and right thinking, and I need to have right thinking about where I put my energy, my creativity, my resources, etc., like that, and how to approach it. Again, the sun. um, I think things need to be brought into the light. I think when things are hidden, and when things are secret, and when things are whispered about behind hands, and they can become all out of proportion. And I think that our emperor has no clothes, and I think the more that we bring that into the light and make it known, and we bring these things into the light and make them known, even on a small scale, that I can't live my authentic self unless I'm telling the truth. I can't, I was married to a pathological liar, and it nearly killed me. And I can't deal with people who lie. I can't, you know, I believe in manners. I believe in tact. I don't want to say, "Oh, you look horrible in that outfit.
Yeah,
Why did you bother to
exactly.
spend $50 on those shoes? They look terrible." No, that's not being honest. That's being rude and mean. There's a difference. But things that affect how people live their lives and are being done in secret or whatever, and the way that I am in my life, if I'm in the light and telling the truth, I don't have to worry about anybody coming back to me saying, trying to blackmail me, or it's like, you said so. Yeah, I did. I sure did.
Didn't you
And
hear me the first time?
you want me to say it again?
Yeah.
I mean, so that,
Shall I type it and email it to you?
yeah,
So
I mean, these three cards really, really, I think, and I think you posed the questions of, the challenges and evolving and stuff, but really I think what it speaks to is, how do you go forward every year, or how do you go forward, in time, to become your authentic self?
hmm
I really
I see
think
a
that.
lot of alchemy in your reading, Linda, with the ace, and you were talking about how the Ace of Pentacles, you um learn to just in a more tactile and real way this year, that there is more than
Yeah,
just money as a resource. And with your King of Swords, having mastery over your mind and where you put your thoughts, and that sun, I just kind of see you like working with all of the things that you have available and
right.
putting them together. And I love that um the sun says the same thing but also different things to both of you in this reading. And I think tarot is so cool that way, because it's all filtered through the personality
Yes.
of the reader, the
Yeah,
questioner, and it
absolutely.
always has an answer that resonates with
With
that
the
person.
person. Yeah.
Hmm
And I think that'll be real interesting for the listeners too, because I don't think we've ever had a reading where we had this, I mean, in the same position.
2 out of 3, that is
Three.
pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
And these were the ones that they fell out. So that's like,
That's
whew,
why, like, I try to use this as just a psychological, like, scientific sort of, I'm tapping into my own mind. And then stuff like that happens. And it is the universe. I feel like going, figure that out, bitch.
And you know what?
Explain
We
that.
did.
it
We
was a
did.
Yes.
random thing. It was just a random thing.
It's just a
Okay.
random
That's
thing.
that's fine. It
Okay.
can be
Yeah.
a
But
random thing.
I've been
But
on so many calls like this where it has happened in groups of people where
mhm,
there's been like a predominance of one suit or even the same card coming up
yeah,
again and again and again in
yeah.
different, you know, and it's just, I mean, there's 78 cards And, everybody has their own deck in their own hand, and it's not like
We
I just
didn't
think it's so
plan it. It's
cool.
not like we
No, we
sat
Yeah,
didn't
there and
plan
said,
it.
no,
okay, we're going to make sure we get
we don't
those,
plan anything ahead, you guys.
I know. We don't planning.
You think
What's we
as
don't need no stinking planning.
I think our listeners know that. I think they
Yeah,
are learning that about
I
us.
think
Yes,
they have figured that out.
absolutely, absolutely. So this was great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angie, for creating that spread, and um, maybe we can word it out and put it in the show
I was
notes
gonna say maybe you
for
could work it
the
up into a more formal, like even like
yeah,
working towards your authentic self or something like
Yeah.
that,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Totally.
year
I
by
love that, and
year.
I was thinking about, when you were talking, Linda, about, your authentic self and, speaking your truth. And it's also that, when you take that King of Swords as being the biggest challenge, say, through your transition, when we learn to speak our truth, that is like a challenge, right? Because, like you said, we want to speak our truth, but we also want to be very mindful, and we don't want to hurt people by telling our truth. And when you think about the King of Swords, like you said, he's the master of his element, and it takes mastery on how to learn to tell your truth, to be authentic, but in a way that is not going to hurt other people intentionally, right? Like we can't prevent hurting people. Sometimes we hurt people and we don't realize it. Like,
Right.
I can come out and say the truth about something for myself, and maybe my mother doesn't like it and it might hurt her feelings, but it's my truth. And
Hmm.
I think when we talk about speaking our truth, and we have to first know what our truth is before you can speak it. And that takes skill, and that takes mastery, and that
I
takes
have to
time.
I have to give you an example. When I was working in the law office, it was a small office. There were 3/4 attorneys, one who didn't come in a lot, and he was kind of transitioning into another way, but his name was on the door. So he was in and out a little bit. And then the woman that I replaced, I was hired as paralegal office manager. She left to go to law school. And so she went to law school in Nebraska, I think was where she went because she was from there. And she came back when she graduated and passed the bar. And she started working in the office. And so she had known the other two attorneys when they worked in up in Denver, Sterling, which is towards Kansas, outside of Denver. And she had known them for a while, so they were kind of a trio in the office before she left. And so she came back and was doing well, and I liked her. She trained me very well, and we're still friends. Um, but she was very kind of social, and the kind of person who was like sending cards to people, their birthday or sympathy cards. And she'd say, oh, so and so client's mother died, we need to send them a card. And it's like, okay, whatever. And I'm sort of like that in some regards, but not super like that. So she was saying one day, we were in just kind of in the common area, and she said something about, oh, we should all get, and I was kind of like getting be over being a paralegal. And she was like, oh, we should all get together and do something on the weekend, or get to, do blah, have a cookout, blah, blah. And it just came out of my mouth. It's like, oh no, I already spent enough time with you people. I mean, I
Oh boy.
mean to say that. I
See,
honestly didn't mean to say it, but it was just like I could not stop my. I was like, no, this is my
That's
weekends are
like
my
the
weekends.
that's like the Knight of Swords right there.
And
That's the
and
Knight of Swords.
everyone was like, oh, okay, I guess I better go back to my. I just scattered,
goodbye then.
and I
Um,
was like, oh,
This wasn't awkward at all.
but I didn't, then I thought, well, should I say? And I'm like, no, if I say anything else, it's just going to make it worse.
Yeah.
And, it was just a little blip in the road. And then we all went on because I liked them. But I just didn't want to spend any more time with them. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week was enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of togetherness. That is a lot of togetherness.
Even when they were in court and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely, that mastery.
A thing that Wendell says now.
Things just bubble up and they come out. So
Yeah.
A thing that my husband has had to say many, many times for the past 33 years is, honey, you said that out loud, right?
Well, thank you so much, ladies, for another marvelous episode.
They're all bangers.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So I appreciate our listeners tuning in. And I hope that this episode gave you a little bit more clarity into what we think is important or why we think year in review spreads are important and how they can help you moving forward into the new year. And I really loved, Angie, what you said about using the seasons, because that is very much of a pagan, like the Sabbats, right?
It's just the way the world does it. You look
Yeah.
outside and, it's different, obviously, in the Southern Hemisphere where I've never been. So, but here it's really cold. This does not, like, everything outside is saying, this is not when we start new things. This is when we rest, we reflect, we make some plans. We might, plan out what seeds we want to plant and what maybe things we want to launch
in
it makes a lot of sense because it is like the time when you really can't produce so much. Do you know what I mean? It's like a big time of like rest, reflection, you're hibernating, right? You're in a warm, cozy place. And you're indoors more, and you're being given an opportunity to do a lot of.
Now that the holidays are past, you're probably going to have more time alone, and it is starting to lighten up outside, so you can allow that to.
They celebrate the Yuletide, the Christmas, and that's why they put Christmas and Yule. Because of a lot of things, because of Mithras, who was a pagan god in the Roman times, who was born of a virgin, who was the Prince of Light, and so they had all these.
This is not an original story.
It's not an original story, no. And also, shepherds would not be watching their flocks in the wintertime. Shepherds would be watching their flocks in July, out grazing, because they're not
in the winter. We're eating them.
Yes, we're eating them.
And we're wearing their wool.
But regardless of all that, it's like they do the solstice, the longest night, the shortest day, and then the light starts to come back. And by the end of next week, you'll really start to notice it as we move forward into Imbolc and that, 1st of February, before we go to the cursed daylight savings time.
And listeners, stay tuned because we will also have an episode regarding Imbolc. So we have a lot of stuff.
We'll keep going through the deck, of course, because that's our first love or whatever. But we also have a lot of really exciting ideas to explore with the tarot in 2025. I'm very excited.
So am I. Super excited. Well, thank you, ladies, for another wonderful podcast episode. And